Hey guys, how's it going? My name's Matt. You guys know me, and I have been in the San Juan Islands for a little while. I'm at Friday Harbor, and I ran into a very interesting person, and because I cycle around the world, I run into interesting cyclists, and this is probably the most interesting cyclist of the last, I don't know, 4 decades? 4 decades? I don't know. Anyway, this is Stephen Roberts. And
Hello,
he and I have been drinking some whiskey and talking about life and everything. If you don't know Steve Roberts, I remember the way that I met you was seeing an episode of Donahue, and he was being interviewed by Donahue.
Steve Roberts' home is a 580-pound, $1.5 million bicycle. Its name is Behemoth, which stands for Big Electronic Human Energized Machine.
His amazing recumbent bicycle. And if you guys remember, how many miles did you put on that?
17,000.
17,000. And where did you ride it?
Around the United States.
Around the United
Started
States.
in Ohio, which inspired long-distance travel, and then kind of a loop around the country.
Now, I have a wireless mic on me. He's got a wireless mic on him. I've got a camera that's recording to an SD card that I'm going to put into my laptop, and probably I could even review it on my phone and all of these things. But when he put that bike together, the world was a different place.
It was.
Tell us a little bit about how you put. I mean, obviously, how many times have you told this story?
Well, it was 1983, and I was sitting in Ohio thinking, I'm busting my butt to do things that I don't really want to do anymore, to pay for things I really didn't want after all. House in suburbia in Ohio, So I simply decided to take a step back, list all of my passions, and make a lifestyle out of them. I was 30, So they were things like travel and adventure and computers and bicycles and ham radio and falling in love and geeky toys and, the obvious favorite stuff, right? So I simply combined them. The obvious solution was to computerize a bicycle and travel full-time while riding for a living.
Roberts put keypads on his handlebars. He wrote while he rode, sending his electronic mail by telephone modem.
I took off and it became a career, and I ended up traveling from 83 to 91 on this 3 different versions of this. That's the final one, which was way too heavy.
Now, one of them's in a museum, right?
This is in a museum.
That one's in a museum.
It's in the Computer History Museum down in Silicon Valley.
So let's understand this. While you're rolling along, you can access a mainframe computer information according to whatever code might be appropriate.
And it had a fax machine on it, right?
Well, yeah, that was kind of a minor bit. It was.
It had
I could type while riding. There was
type
keyboard in the handlebars, so I typed in binary, just like playing a flute, chording.
You can write a letter. You can talk computerese with another computer operator in real time. Isn't that so?
I'm on the internet.
You're on the internet.
Right.
So you could be rolling along and suddenly find yourself in a sexy conversation.
And there was a Macintosh in the console, but there was a Mac screen that let me use that entire user interface while mobile. Cursor control was with head movement, with little ultrasonic sensors in the helmet. And I had a 24-hour-a-day satellite email via the Qualcomm OmniTrack system, so I could, it was in the background doing email and communications for me.
This will be Steve's mailbox this time around. This little board will allow his bike to receive satellite transmissions, bring that information up into the display where he can read it, and then he can turn around, compose a letter while he's writing, and send it right back.
Text only. It was 165 bits per second. Now I have...
Bits.
Bits.
Bits. Yeah, right. It's a bit, and then a kilobit. Yeah. And then it's a megabit,
right?
And then it's a gigabit.
And I have gigabit fiber.
And then a terabit.
Yeah. I have gigabit fiber here in the lab, and I've got 144 terabytes of NAS sitting up there in one rack space, and it just blows my mind.
Okay, you said it blows your mind. I watched that episode, and I thought about when I watched that episode, I wonder what I would like to talk to you about, And one of the things I'd like to talk to you about would be like, what is your impression of technology? Because you were in technology. You were looking for the newest, latest, greatest, kind of newest, and pushing the envelope of what was possible.
I was writing about it.
And you were writing about it. You were in it. But today, technology has progressed leaps and bounds. I mean, like multiples. But I was thinking, what would a guy like you think about today's technology? Do you think it's right about where it should have been? Or do you think we've gone farther ahead than you thought? Or do you think that we're a little slower than you thought?
I think we're on an inevitable path, but one of the fundamental changes, I think, is that it's simply part of the environment now.
Yeah.
Whereas back then you had to be a geek, you had to learn a lot. You know,
It's
you wanted-
mainstream. It's mainstream.
Yeah, you want to do things with
Yeah,
computers,
yeah.
you've got to become a computer geek.
Yeah.
And in fact, in the early days of networking, before the internet and everything, like CompuServe and such, if somebody else was on CompuServe, they were cool because they were smart enough to have a computer and a modem. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, that's a big filter right there.
Yeah.
Right?
I have a computer and a modem in my pocket right now.
Yeah, yeah.
I got a computer and a modem in my wrist right now.
Like, I don't know what this thing's doing.
Yeah.
but-
That's
but
amazing.
it's
Yeah,
a, it's a real, and the another fundamental change from then to now is that back then phones were attached to the wall. The idea of being able to communicate with somebody else in the world while moving around was impossible.
That's what he sees. This is just like looking at a computer readout machine on any home computer. All right.
Yeah, they use something sort of like this in the attack helicopters, you know, the Apache, although this is certainly a consumer version of it.
You know,
Yeah.
it wasn't even something you thought about. It
Yeah.
was a big, expensive, long distance, you know. So you couldn't collaborate with people who weren't in your neighborhood. Publishing was a process where you made manuscripts and sent them to a publisher who would filter them and put them in a magazine or a book. It's not throw something on the web and have it be accessible to the world 3 seconds from now. You know.
Well, I mean, I've lived in China for 15 years. When I first went to China, it was a taste of what you're talking about. Long distance phone calls. When I go to China, Mom, you're not going to hear from me for a while because it's too expensive. And you know what? I didn't even know how many numbers to put into that phone. You know what I mean? But today, I mean, we have WeChat and Instant Message and all of these things. It is seamless, you know?
What fascinated me back then is that we were just in the process of getting rid of the geographic boundaries between people. Like, you know, you could be in England and I could be in America. Talking back then was hard, but we were eliminating that whole boundary. So that's all good, right?
Yeah.
We were creating new ones. Because if you were on like Prodigy and I was on CompuServe, well, you're a little weird and I can't talk to you because you're in a different culture. So
Right.
forget it, you know. So now we were making these new boundaries that were orthogonal to national boundaries. And for the longest time, that was really a big deal. People who were serious had lots of different accounts, and you'd go check your mail on MCI and Prodigy and, you know, and AOL or CompuServe and Genie and whatever. Eventually, that all got subsumed into the internet. But there was a period of.
What do you think about the movement of technology today towards like large multinational companies controlling like a lot of the, you know what I mean? There was a lot of like Netscape Navigator, and then there was AOL, and then those are the big dogs. But there was also like, you know, ICQ. Wasn't ICQ started by something fairly small? Wasn't that, you know, there was all these like little guys that were starting up and doing stuff. And now the only real big things that everybody's kind of talking about are all offshoots of major big companies who have control of all the data, all the information, all the, you know.
Other people decide how much bandwidth you get.
Do you think that's do you think that's a dangerous thing, or do you think?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
It is dangerous.
Yeah.
Because it's, you know, it's democratizing where anybody can publish anything anytime, except what if they don't get bandwidth because somebody doesn't like them politically or whatever.
For sure.
Yeah, and in some parts of the world, that's a real thing.
Yeah,
You know, here
it's like a whole new set of problems.
Yeah.
You know, we're in a technology age. You were in an age where it was like everything was, it was like the Wild Wild West, where you were putting the claim, you know, like, this is my section of Idaho, you know? You know?
It was dreamy back then because I would meet people out on the road who had never heard of a recumbent bicycle or a computer. I would have my little Radio Shack Model 100, which was just this, 32K of memory and a 4-pound thing that was in my packs. And crowds would gather to look at it. They couldn't believe that I was plugging it into a phone and doing something, I even got in trouble with a cop in Virginia because he wanted what I'm doing with the phone and who's paying for it.
I can imagine. I went through China. I went through, I accidentally walked into a couple of military installations, and I had to, like, what are you doing here with? And I was on a trike, so we had very similar recumbent, weird vehicle, and there's all these questions like, what are you doing? But I can only imagine what you were faced with, that and spades, very strange, very strange.
Good times.
And so, you traveled around. What was one of your favorite stops along your travel journeys while you were cycling?
Lots of them.
I guess, yeah. That's a bad question.
I mean, to put it in context, I feel very provincial, actually. People just think, oh, you've seen the world. Well, I only traveled in the United States. So I'm talking to somebody who's traveled all over other places. So,
Yeah.
you know, back then, faraway places were apparently had this perception of being dangerous and different. And people in Ohio told me to carry a gun because I was going to be going through the South, you know. And it's like, that wasn't necessary.
Yeah. Well, did you realize in your travels that the world was full of a lot more nice people than bad people? I mean, did that dispel that rumor?
It did.
Travel does that. Travel does that.
Yeah, I was afraid of the unknown because everybody had convinced me to be.
Yeah.
And even in a regional level, like I was in Alabama and somebody said, "Oh, you going through Louisiana? You better carry a 30-06 with you. Them Cajuns, they just soon shoot you. Look at you." Then I got to Louisiana and somebody said, "You went through Alabama, didn't get mugged? Man, them people are crazy." You know.
Listen to this. I mean, the world runs on a lot of things, but one of them is fear.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And
it's
fear
remarkable.
drives so many things in people's emotions, and it's so wasteful. It's like we spend so much time being scared. But as soon as you travel, and you're right. Look, he was riding such a strange thing. You were doing something so unique.
And it opened doors, you know, everywhere in the world. Everybody I met, there were these amazing people, and I would find the people would be drawn to me would be people who were doing interesting things. So I would do the show and tell, and then this would end up in their garage, and then I would get to learn what they do.
Of course.
And so day after day, I would just have this Whitman sampler of lifestyles, I used to call it.
People ask me, why do you ride the trike? And I say, because one, it's comfortable. Two, it allows me to record. Like obviously, you were on two wheels, but the third wheel allows you to. I can put my shifter, my steering, and my brake on one hand, and the other hand can fly a drone or hold a selfie stick or all. Think about a drone. Think about a drone. If you had a drone. Oh my gosh.
I used to fantasize about real-time streaming of data collection and all this kind of stuff. It was completely impossible.
Yes.
But I would imagine.
I carry an airplane in my backpack. in my pannier. It's crazy.
I remember the moment I decided to build a keyboard into the handlebars, because I'd carried the little Model 100 and then later an HP, but I had to stop. I had a whole writing day, and then it's like, okay, here's this great story. Tonight I'm going to write. And then I'm falling in love or tired or making dinner, whatever. It never happens, you know. So my work habits sucked. And I remember it was in West Texas, and I suddenly thought, wait a minute, flute. 9 fingers. I play the flute. I could do this with text. So now for me, it was the equivalent of streaming, because I could now use this time while mobile to capture.
Both hands, right? You're both working on both handlebars.
These low 5 fingers were 32 combinations, 32. So that's the whole alphabet.
How long did it take you to get down the patterns?
A few days. Yeah, it wasn't bad.
Days?
Well, days to learn it. Another few weeks to get good.
Okay. Yeah.
And even then, even after I got good at it, it was still much slower than a regular keyboard. It's squeeze, squeeze, squeeze.
Yeah.
You know, you're not coming off of one key while going for another. So
there was no swiping back then.
No.
You know, there was no what's that called, where you can swipe the letters?
Swipe was actually
swipe. Yeah. You literally can swipe letters.
Use it.
Yeah. Words. Yeah.
But what made this work is that I then took my 68HC11 and I wrote a little utility with a macro list of all the things I did commonly. So if I said CZ, it would delete it and replace it with Cheers, Steve. You know, and I did lots of those. So now
short key.
Yeah, now I'm basically up to my normal typing speed, as long as it's regular text. So I could be traveling and writing, and you know.
Okay, we get all this nerdy stuff out of the way, but you brought up something that I wanted to ask you about, because a friend of mine read your book. Tell me the name of your book.
Oh, here.
Show us.
There's a copy over here.
I'll leave a link. It's on Amazon?
No, not very much. It's been out of print, but I'm working on a new edition of it right now. Same text.
Computing Across America. Yeah. Now, my friend read your book, and he said, you know, I thought I was going to talk about like cycling and things, but it was all about falling in love with you know, and having relationships.
Yeah, well, that's life evolves.
Hey, man, love is part of life, you know? So, yeah. But he was like...
So I have the full text of that on my server right now, and I'm in the process of getting it back out as a physical book again. It's been out of print for ages. And,
well, where could I even get one?
At the moment, you can't. But
do you have will you PDF it or put it up on Kindle or something like that?
Yeah, I can do that, and I can send you the link to the full text right now.
Yeah, let me know. I'd love to read it. I'd love to read it. That's awesome. So we are in, like, that was a long time ago, right?
Yes.
That Donahue episode. What year was that?
That was 92.
1992. But today...
And the trip was 83 to 91.
Okay, yeah, this was after the trip, and you were going on like a publicity tour, sort of.
Right.
And I was asking him what prompted Donahue to call you? And you had a New York Times article?
Wall
or
Street Journal.
Wall Street Journal.
From the perspective of the Wall Street Journal, they called me cheerfully irresponsible about money, which I think
Cheerfully
marvelous
irresponsible.
phrase.
You know what? If you're too responsible, it's boring. Come on, nobody wants to be too responsible.
When my dad died, one of the things I got from him was a box of his old home movies from the 1940s, and they were amazing. You know, this like the maiden voyage of the liner America in 1940, walking around Havana and Port-au-Prince and stuff. So I thought, oh God, I got to digitize this. So, you know, I went through the exercise of trying to find people to do it. Couldn't find anybody I wanted. So, well, I'll just do it and then sell all this crap on eBay and get back to my life.
Yeah.
And it turned into a business. So this part is actually not film. This is video of various flavors, you know, so that's one part.
So you're digitizing stuff here?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is all people's different kinds of videotapes, including professional stuff like U-matic and Betacam.
Holy moly.
Anything to anything Motu system there. And then video routing is all here. And then over here,
of course.
this little rig is, in fact,
holy moly.
yeah, let me just put
Is that Niagara Falls?
Yeah, here. So this is 1926 film from a client, and or late 20s, maybe a little after 26. But here I've got it running a little bit too fast. But anyway, so this whole contraption is for 8 and 16 millimeter home movies.
Wow.
And then in here, this is for doing slides and negatives, and I shoot right again down to the grain with a beautiful mirrorless camera. Or negatives that are handled by this gadget here. And I use Lightroom with an M1 to do all the tweaking and stuff.
So you've been moving with the times forward with technology, but you've still been holding on to the past with the formats. You know, you've been using that as a...
It's turned into a labor of love.
Yeah.
And what's fun is that all of these, every single time capsule that I deal with from some client is a connection with that client. And tears are often involved, you know, and some people bring in this big box of old home movies and tell me about Granddad, and then I unlock it for them, and suddenly they can put it on Facebook or whatever. So.
Do you want to cry about something?
Sure.
My dad passed away a few years back. That's not, I mean, obviously it's tragic, but he passed away. He had boxes and boxes of 8 millimeter and slides. And so at the time that he did this, high 8 was the thing, right? So he took a camcorder with high 8, put it on a tripod. You know what I'm talking about.
I know where you're going.
Then he put out, you know, he put the 8 millimeter reel to reel.
Yep.
Projected it on a screen, pulled in tight with the high 8, and he recorded, and that was his idea of digitizing, right?
Was high tech back then.
That was high tech. Yeah. The only saving grace to that is that my grandma, who's passed away, my grandpa, who's passed away, him, who's passed away, my mom, and all of us sat around and commentated to the projected footage.
Right.
So that, of course, is priceless.
Yes.
But he threw away the 8 millimeter.
Oh, I was just going to ask.
All gone.
That's too bad. Yeah.
All gone.
A lot of people copied them to VHS, and companies would do it and throw it away. And VHS is awful.
I mean, that quality, the 8 millimeter.
That was good.
It's phenomenal.
They're photos.
They're photos.
Yeah, it's like there's some of the old 16 millimeter stuff looks like a 8x10 black and whites come to life.
Yeah, right. I was like, hey, Dad, not to Dad, obviously. He was gone at that time, but I went like, hey, did Dad do it? Where did Dad put that high 8 stuff? Because I wanted, or 8 millimeter stuff, because I want to do something with it. He's like, why did he keep it? You know, he recorded it on high 8.
Sometimes when I digitize things for people, I suggest that they show it to mom or an elderly relative or something, and then record, even surreptitiously if necessary, the comments while watching it.
The comments were amazing.
And then we can take those things and go back and edit them onto the quiet movie. And so now future generations will be able to see grandma commenting on great grandma. You know, it's wonderful. So.
Well, when my dad was alive, he called me, he had pancreatic cancer. And so I went directly back home, and as a YouTuber, I recorded a series of his life. And along the way, also, I recorded birthday wishes to my daughter, who's now 6, but her when she turned 16. And I recorded a whole series of videos for my dad to be part of our lives, no matter, you know, how long he's been gone. Unfortunately, cancer took him way quicker than I had every day a couple of things, but he died very quickly. I only got 1/10 of what I really wanted out of that, but still to have the capture of the videos. And on top of that, I mean, what was video like when you were born? You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, when I was born, it was reel to reel and inaccessible. You know,
Right,
like,
right.
yeah, right.
What a pleasure. This was a very random encounter.
It was, yeah.
very, very random, but you have had somewhat of an influence on my life and in perspective of video. I remember watching you and watching what you did with what you had available to you at the time. And, you know, I was trying to tell stories in China and thinking about, you know, different people that did different things. And you know, I'd already known your story, you know, as a younger kid. I think maybe my dad showed me or something, but very cool.
I'll have to send you a link to the Donahue show. I've got it.
I will have to download some clips and I'll put them over the video so that it has some context. But thank you so much. That's awesome.
This has been super fun.
And I did that same thing. My grandpa died, and I digitized all of his old videos and stuff. And
I want to go back in time and ask him some questions. You know, I'm kicking myself for not just sitting down and interviewing him. I've been watching his movies. Wait, who's she? You know,
right.
Story.
What happened? I was hanging out with my grandpa, and you know what's funny is when you're young, you're naive, and you think you're better than everybody else.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
So my grandpa, he was an old guy. I don't got anything to relate to him. But then I became like about 25, 30. And I started to forge a relationship with my grandpa. I love that guy. We would sit and talk and everything. And then towards the end, as he was starting to die, I used to think about how unfair the world is. Because I would have probably had if he was my age, he and I would sit at a bar and we'd talk about a girl, and maybe we'd, you know, like we're young and we're single and we could do all of these things, and how unfair the world is that, you know, maybe we would hang out in a different age at a different even level and share different things. And, you know, part of that is the essence of why life is so special, and part of it is, you know, why we need to cherish what we got, you know.
And I'm living in that world because just today I had 2 new clients today, and people bring me the stuff from their personal history. They'll tell me its background, they'll tell me the story of who's who, and I realize, oh my God, is that a tear? You know, I mean, I'm actually drawing out these emotions with people. And
heck yeah.
And I feel like I've become part of all these connections. It's not like, here, buy my gadget. It's here, have access to your own personal history, you know, and it's a really touching and emotionally satisfying business to be in.
Okay, one more thing. I'd asked you this off camera, but now that I'm here, so technology has moved so far forward. You were on the forefront of building a unique gadget using whatever technology you could find. Today, if you were that guy again, you know, and you were working on like doing something, what would you choose as the vehicle? What would you do? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I've thought about it over the years as things have changed, and of course it's always like whatever's the kind of next layer, you know, and it's hard to imagine now having the same set of motivations. But if I was 30 and wanted to do
you would have those same motivations.
I would have those same motivations, right? So, you know, it would be higher bandwidth streaming and you know, all at the time. I'm fascinated by tools that let me see outside the limitations of my brain and senses. You know? And so I'm fascinated by data collection and sensors and things that give me information about the environment that I wouldn't otherwise perceive. You know, optics and things that let me see outside, you know, the spectrum.
He'd be a meta gigolo. You'd be a meta gigolo.
How I would translate that into a bike trip, or would I? I mean, it might have been something.
Who knows?
Who
knows,
I mean,
right?
I moved to water after that, so
yeah,
you know,
he's on the water. Actually, we're in Friday Harbor, and you know, you're living on a boat.
I live on a 50-foot boat,
which is beautiful. Which is beautiful.
And I commute to this building, but this is changing. I'm just in the process of shutting this down and moving to a 48-foot mobile lab. So I bought a big trailer, and I'm putting it out on a lovely piece of property in the middle of the island, and all of this geekery will be on wheels again. So
very cool.
Swan song.
Well, thank you. Well, thanks everybody. Check them out. Earthship.com. Microship.
Like tiny boat.
Yeah.
MICROSHIP.
Yeah. And I'll leave links to his book. And he's a very, very interesting fella.
Thank you.
We'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Can you give me a Jayoe? Jayoe.
How concerned you should be. This technology could replace me.
We'll be right back after these messages.
Now, Mr. Las Vegas live in Louisville. Here's Wayne Newton.